Ta-dam, it's showtime. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Solutions. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. And yes, beautiful Lisa D, I'm very happy to see you 3 times today. Yay. And I hope to see you many, 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 many more times again this week. Anyway, so happy to be back again with beautiful Brice. How are you, honey? How was your week? We didn't see you last week. I know that was me that had to just not, I had stuff that I had to do that came up suddenly. So apologies for that. But yeah, how are you doing? How's the week been?
So good. And I was telling you off camera, and I hope our audience, our friends watching will second this. You guys, doesn't Shanti just look so stunning in that pink color? Like she turned on and I was like, whoa, that pink like makes your eyes pop. Like I definitely you look, I mean, you always look beautiful, but that pink just really brings out your features. So I hope our friends, especially our girlfriends watching, like Shanti looks hot, doesn't she, in that pink color?
You're making me blush. But thank you. You know, I was just saying to you, this one, and you see me maybe wear an orange one, were gifted to me by a friend of mine, and they silk. So and I really, and they're these oversized shirts, except this one's a smaller size than the orange one, and underneath it, I'm wearing like 3 layers, and of course it's knitwear, so I feel a bit like a sausage. But I must say, it's never a color I would buy for myself, ever. But my granddaughter, that's her favorite color. So she and I will often she'll buy purple things because she knows it's my favorite, and I'll buy pink things because I know it's her favorite, and then we show each other.
Well, you look stunning. You look absolutely stunning in that color. It's so striking on you. So I think you definitely. And I don't know. I'm not someone that would ever buy pink too. So it's interesting when that
Try
happens.
it.
You
Try
look
it.
so stunning. Like on the, it just. I think you should definitely invest in more, at least camera clothes, like in pink, that bright pink color, because it just makes you pop. So absolutely.
Thank you. I feel like glowing. I might just go and enter Mrs. Universe tomorrow after this. Grandma Universe. Nowadays, the saying MILF, right?
Yes, yes.
So I'm GILF. I'm not anyone's girlfriend anymore. I'm now your girlfriend.
Oh, yeah, but Shanti, I think they'd kick you out because you don't look like a grandma. I know you are one, but you don't look like one. They'd probably be like, you're at the wrong pageant.
Let's do yoga.
Yes, you're in the wrong one. Oh, thank you, Lisa. It's a leotard. I got a leotard on. Wednesday's my day.
Yeah.
Massive.
Brice, you always a hottie, so
My
the
hair is
life is what
dirty.
it
It
is.
is what it is. You know,
Well,
if we're living
yeah,
in times, we might as well look good doing it, right? So
for sure, babe, for sure. Absolutely. So, welcome everybody. So good to see you all, the usual suspects in the chat again. And I know we had Double Dose Jesse before, and you know what we did? We decoded The Simpsons.
I haven't watched yet, but it popped on my YouTube feed. I can't wait. I can't wait to watch
Double
that.
Dose, 2D. And you know, Jessie, she it's not just what they're decoding. She goes into all the background stuff as well. Like each and every one of the events that I spoke about, she would give background of societies or whatever it was that was actually engineering whatever event. Because what it really is they would obviously get these kids in the Looking Glass, the Star Wars Now, and the Voice of God project. And Jesse was in those, along with Elon Musk, actually.
Oh, wow.
He was one of them. He was one of her training partners. And they would then get different kids to look at different things, and obviously, and then they would get biofeedback from the kids, right? And then what they did was they took that information and they sold it to the movie producers.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
You know what I love about Jessie? There's many things I love about Jessie, but you know what I really love about Jessie? Like, she is a girl after my own heart. Obviously, she's super organized in her information and everything she knows. But I get really excited about gossiping with you guys, and she's so cool, calm, and collected when she gives her research. I'm like hyperactive, and I always admired that about her, that she's able to be so calm and like objective. Where I'm over here talking about wieners and body parts that are missing. And she's so cool, calm, and collected. Like, I'm like, Jesse's such a grown up. Like, I'm a 41-year-old teenager. Like, like,
Well, it's funny, like every so often as well, we'll be having like, personal conversations, meetings, whatever. And so you'll have to now throw a few F-bombs. Jessie, I go, oh gosh, Jessie, sorry. She goes,
Jesse's heard worse.
she actually says, I love you just the way you are, Shandy.
I like the way that Jessie like can like cool, calm, and collective like give the information, and she's just so objective and just so like just it is what it is. And I'm like, when I grow up, I want to be like that. Like
Yeah.
right now I'm in.
No,
I'm
she's amazing. Yeah, she's lovely.
She's a
She's
teenager, you know. So
no, I love me my Jess. Anyway. Okie dokie, let's get on with it. Padre Pio the Stigmatic.
Padre Pio, guys. Yeah, we're going to be talking about a lot of different stigmatics, as we said. And Padre Pio, Chantelle, I actually put a call out for a request because there's like, we can't go over every single one of them because we'd be here for forever. But Padre Pio was the highest requested stigmatic for me to cover. He is a modern, like a lot of people know about it because he lived pretty, I mean, I was not born when he was alive, but oh, our back screen just changed.
Sorry, yes, I'm just looking for the pictures. Carry on that you said. I'm looking for the other room.
Did we just like jump into a whole new, like, hopefully in this new future?
We're back in our own portal again.
I was like, holy crap, did we just catch that on
magic? I tell you, magic.
Have hands. So let me he died. I mean, some people he died in 1968, so there might be people in the audience who actually remember him. I was born in 1983, so I missed him. But I was telling you now, we were chatting a little bit about this backstage, you guys, Shanti and I, about some of these theories around the stigmata. Now, I'm going to reiterate this. I think, Shanti, you were raised Protestant as well, and I think a lot of our friends watching probably were raised Protestant. This is not a part of Protestant culture, stigmatas or saints. Like, this is something that's very foreign to, even though I don't go to church anymore, like looking back at my childhood with Christianity, this was something that was like never talked about in the Presbyterian church. Like there was no stigmata, there was no saints. So for me, going through the lives of these people, it's so interesting, like how a lot of these stigmatics are so embedded in Catholicism, like almost to the point where you do start to question the reason why they have the stigmata. And we can elaborate further on that.
May I just ask you something here, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Is it always Catholicism that they are that their practices are embedded in? You know what I mean?
From my research so far, now there's over like 300 recorded cases. They are all heavily devout Catholics.
Right.
And we're going to talk even more about another case next week that I think is absolutely, in my opinion, totally mental disorder. And that's the thing, guys. I was saying, I think I said this before, like I check the Cassiopeians a lot to see what they have to say about these kinds of things. And it was asked once, like, is the stigmata real? Because a lot of people think this isn't real. It's just a cry for attention. And there could be some cases where it is just people are doing it to themselves. But the Cassiopeians, all they said is yes, and they wouldn't elaborate on it. Now, we do know that in my research that a lot of demonic attacks do actually cause blood, the drawing of blood. And so that kind of gives me a different perspective too. And sometimes I think, and things are complicated, right? Human beings, that's like my theme. It's like human beings are complex. And like with someone like Padre Pio, I actually like this. From what I read of this guy, I really like Padre Pio. But we can have people who have really good intentions that get caught up in something they think is good, but is actually not so good. Because we know martyrdom is of the negative. Like to martyr yourself is not of the light. And I think sometimes this idea of suffering, suffering is a huge part in a lot of spiritual practices, but we suffer in a lot of spiritual practices so we'll change, so we'll get out of the suffering, so it'll instigate us to move. Where it seems like in, I don't know if it's all Catholicism or just devout Catholics that, and maybe some fundamentalist Protestants, that suffering is like wanted almost. Like people almost, it like gives them this idea of like they're doing something good if they're in pain. And that's so messed up in my head, because that's, from a yoga perspective, like we suffer because we want to change and observe ourselves so that we don't suffer anymore, so we can liberate ourselves, right? So anyway, but let's get into it. I do think that, there's this mental disorder. I do think Padre Pio did have a mental disorder called scrupulosity. And that's not like, it's not like scrupulosity isn't like, it's not like a personality disorder. It's an anxiety disorder. So scrupulosity is basically somebody who is OCD about religion. They become extremely almost dogmatic. And if they break their practices of religion, or it could be yoga, to the point where it like causes them mental anxiety to even like, someone who has had scrupulosity over yoga, if they like missed a practice one morning because they had a headache or weren't feeling good, they would like beat themselves up all day. It's an OCD. It's a form of OCD. And I know like even like the Mormons, that we were just chatting about Mormons offline, and a lot of the ex-Mormon podcasts that I've listened to researching the Mormons, they talk a lot about scrupulosity being heavily in the Mormon faith. So part of me wonders, because I struggle with anxiety. I have CPTSD. I have OCD. I have some things I do that are OCD. I've been diagnosed with that. So I understand that anxiety of being in that place of feeling like things have to go a certain way or your world's going to fall apart. And so we know that comes from trauma. Like we know a kid's not born. Nobody's born having OCD. Like real OCD, not like the crazy, like just being a clean person is not OCD. We're talking about like one of my OCD habits that I have is that like when I do the laundry, for example, just so you guys can understand what I'm talking about. When I do the laundry, the next clothes that go in the hamper as dirty clothes have to be really sweaty. I don't know where that came from. I don't know why I do that, but that is a part of OCD. Andrew Gold on his channel has talked about this a lot, that he used to have to like do his handle on his door multiple times before he went, like to the point where the handle fell off. So it's not like being super, like you could be a clean person without having OCD. I think we kind of confuse this term. OCD is just these weird habits that people pick up through anxiety. And so, like I have an OCD about when I leave my house, I will lock my door, do the handle 3 times, get in my car, drive around the building, come back, go and check my door again. If I'm the last one to leave. If my boyfriend's still here, I won't do that. It's an OCD thing from anxiety. And so with scrupulosity, I hope that makes sense, maybe explains that a little bit more. With scrupulosity, I think what my opinion and my speculation about what I'm seeing with this, I don't have scrupulosity. That's an OCD I do not have. I wonder though if this energy, because anxiety gives a certain vibrational energy, it's a very high energy. And I wonder sometimes in my conspiracy brain if some of these religions get people to the place of scrupulosity intentionally to manifest a certain energy from them.
Of course. Of course. Yes. I'm definitely going to say yes. And in fact, I think we were speaking about that earlier on in one of Jesse's shows. It's because we as humans are fodder right now, right? Our energy, our consciousness, let's just call it consciousness because, just it's a fine line. Okay. Our louche, our consciousness, if you will, is what they want.
Yeah.
So they cannot manifest for themselves.
Yeah.
They are not able to do that because they are not creators.
Yeah.
We are creators because we are born of God's original spark. Right?
Absolutely.
So that makes us, we are birthed of the creative life force. So therefore we are able to create. We are able to manifest. We manifest our world around us anyway, but we've been doing so unconsciously. So now what's happening is we're learning more and more. Our thoughts, our feelings, our perceptions, and of course, our actions as well, most importantly, but the actions are really an end result of everything else,
Yeah.
are our own manifestations. But when we do it more consciously, we can change our reality.
Yeah.
We and and not in line with what they're doing, because what they do when they manifest, they bend the energy, they contort it and
Yeah.
twist
They
it.
go against the net. That, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
That
So
makes
for
a
a
lot of
while, it's going to work. And let me tell you, they can. You can see how well they can manifest physical monies, goods, etc. But what happens is when you are manifesting from the light of God, it's a natural thing. You have done the work that sufficiently raises your frequency, that puts you in that place to attract and magnetize to yourself. You see, then you don't have to chase, manipulate, contort,
abuse.
twist,
Yeah.
abuse. It now finds you of itself. And that is the difference, Brice, really, between
Yeah.
4D positive and
And 40.
4D negative.
100, and that makes this is my thing with Padre Pio. That makes I'm glad we talked about that, because in my opinion, and you guys can have a totally different opinion, but my opinion of what I've researched of this man, this was a really good person. He really cared about helping people, but I think he was used and abused by the Catholic Church because his heart was in, he loved God, and of course at the time he was born, the way to find God was through religion, and he was born in Italy, so that makes a lot. And he did have a lot of power. He had a lot of what we would call in yoga the siddhis. A lot of he was able to kind of like had psychic abilities and heal people, and he wanted to use that for the good. He really, all the people that knew him, nothing but kind things to say about this man and how he cared for people. And I think he went into the monastery because he felt like that was the best place for him to serve God and serve humanity. Whereas they were like, yeah, let's use this guy because this guy is special. Like there's something about him that's very special. And so that makes a lot of sense. And also I will say, so if we get into how he was born Francisco Forgione. How Italian of a name is that? Like that is such an Italian name. If your last name is Forgione, like that's so Italian. That's Italian AF. So he was born on the 25th of May, 1887, a Gemini. He was a Gemini, to very humble beginnings. And I listened to, now this, how he was born in 1887, guys, is poverty beyond anything I've ever witnessed in the United States, in many countries that I've been to. So that's wild to me that somebody that lived in the 20th century experienced poverty the way that Padre Pio did when he was born. I mean, his family he was born in southern Italy in an area called Campania. His parents were farmers. But when we're talking about, they lived in like a one room shack. Him and all his siblings and his parents. That's how poor they were. So, of course, we know people that poor, oftentimes, we've talked about that with Cesare Borgia and the placing of churches, they cling heavily to religion to give them some sort of hope when they're having a hard time just feeding themselves and keeping the roof over their kids' heads. Now, because he was born poor at this time, this was 1887. So in Italy, nowhere in the world were there like laws around like education and children. So a lot of kids born to he wasn't the only one. There was a lot of poor people around him. They did not get an education at all because by the time they were able to work the fields and help produce for the family, they were sent to work the fields. So the beginning of Padre Pio's life, he had like no education. And we'll get into that because I learned stuff about getting into the monasteries that I didn't know, but we'll get into that when we get to that part of his timeline. He was baptized at Santa Ana Chapel. He would also go on to serve as an altar boy there. Now, his parents attended Mass daily. Daily. Now, I know that I have Catholic friends and people I know whose grandparents might go to Mass daily. But when your parents are attending Mass daily and all their kids are working the farm and they can't hardly put food on the table, this is what I'm talking about. They're very desperately clinging to the salvation of the church for some rhyme or reason to the difficulty of their life. You know, it's pretty obvious, I think, looking back, that that's what was happening. Now, Padre Pio, as I said, he was born with a lot of, he was different. He had a lot of, as I think a lot of us, the same. He could psychically know things. And it was interesting because actually there's a lot of Padre Pio's childhood. I was not born poor. I was born to pretty wealthy parents. I mean, not that side of it. But he had extreme digestion issues when he was a child. I did too. I ended up, when I was 6 months old, I ended up in the children's hospital because I couldn't digest anything. And in the second grade, when I was 8, I ended up back in the hospital. So I wonder, you know, when we talk about bloodlines as well, this is my wonder. I don't know. This is me totally speculating. When we're looking at psychic abilities, a little bit different, and digestion issues, these are all side effects of somebody who is Rh negative. And we know, and I know somebody requested that we eventually do a talk on bloodlines again, which I'm totally able to do that eventually. But and I want to make this very clear. It doesn't matter what bloodline you are, you're special. Like, everybody's special. Every blood type, every bloodline has their own unique gifts and abilities. But O negative specifically, what Shanti and I are both, are typically, generally speaking, tend to be like hyperdrive magnet for spirituality. Like, we get attacked like none other. Like, I got a whole, I mean, my boyfriend thinks it's kind of cool because he's seen me like stand in the bathroom naked and seen like slashes going across my back and stuff. And it's just another Tuesday for me, you know, like he's seen, so, and he's also Rh negative too, but he's A negative. And so I wonder, and I think, in my opinion, that we know a lot of the powers that be in this world are also O negative. And I wonder sometimes if they try to harvest this particular bloodline because there is a natural ability that just seems to be there. We know O negatives also tend to have more energy because we carry more oxygen in our blood. So we have higher endurance. Most athletes are O negative.
If we're listening to what stuff that Caleb is saying as well, because he's also spoken about being O negative, and that for the missions that they would go on for the shadow military would entail O negative blood, because that is part of their bloodline, actually.
Yeah.
And it would, and like he would say that to collect certain artifacts from the living ships, in other words, that which has been left over from Tartaria, it's like just your energy, your frequency is the code. No, is the code. So,
oh, really?
Yes. So
wow,
only
Shanti, where's
rock on, babe. I'm looking for my living ship that I'm going to be unlocking.
Where is it?
Right? So you have to be just the fact that he has the right blood and the right energy and is the right one to collect that artifact would unlock it for him.
What if you
make it available to
together? What if we formed our own group? You and took it
well,
back.
I got to tell you, I'm dreaming up adventures as we speak.
O negatives definitely. Like my grandfather, who had a near-death experience, he was like they have a very O negatives have a very big personality. Sometimes, like I said, we have a lot of oxygen in our blood. O negative, so most athletes are O negative because we can take pain, a lot of pain.
It's physical. It's the hunter-gatherer. O negative is the hunter-gatherer. Yeah. Actually, if you look at that because they did a lot of physical walking, running stuff. So there's a lot of physicality within the O blood groups here.
And I will say that my endurance level is a lot higher than my boyfriend's. He's A negative, but A negatives tend to have a lower endurance level. And I don't know, Padre Pio, this is just my speculation. Now, any Rh negative, especially O negatives, do tend to have digestion problems. That's pretty normal. And my boyfriend always laughs at me and he's like, it's because you're not from this planet. I'm like, listen, you're Rh negative too. Like, your body just has a hard time adjusting to like the food. And that's and actually when I started studying Rh negative more, a lot of my health issues started to make more sense. Like, all of a sudden I had answers as to why. And once I have the answers and I know the riddle, then I'm comfortable with the issue because I know now what to do, and so I'm wondering, I would speculate that Padre Pio was probably O negative. And the powers that be, the Illumishmati, they probably look down at us that got away, us little O negatives that slipped through the cracks. And now that we're figuring out, they're like, oh shit. um, so we see you, Illumishmati. We see, and we have to change the words, guys, because of the algorithms. But I have a feeling Padre Pio was like Shanti and me, and he was an O negative that just slipped through the cracks. And if he gave off a lot of the symptoms of being, obviously in a small village, a kid that's like seeing visions and like, sick all the time, especially in the late 1800s, and already has these healing abilities. People are gonna talk, and rumors are gonna spread that there's this like kid that's kind of weird, I'm sure a lot of O negatives have been called the weirdo before. And so anyway, that's just my speculation. That I could be totally wrong. But nonetheless, in 1897, at 10 years old, he had at that point, he had taken himself to about 3 years of basic education because he wanted to go into the monastery. And so he wanted to become a friar, but was told that he needed a higher level of education if he wanted to enter an order. Now, I didn't know this. I had no idea that this was done in friars and in monasteries. They have to test in. They have to test into to being like, you have to like take a test and be smart enough. I didn't know that was a requirement to like serve God. But nonetheless, what do I know, right? I was just a Presbyterian. So at this point, his father, Padre Pio's father, they were so desperate to get their son into this friary that his father left Italy and came to the United States seeking work. Now, we know at this point, this is at the tail end of the Industrial Revolution. And so if I had to guess, I would guess that his father probably went to New York and was working for a lot of the factories in New York, sending money away so that Padre Pio could be privately educated in order to test into the monastery. On the 27th of September, 1899, he receives the sacrament of confirmation. This is defined as the sealing of the covenant created at baptism. I have some issues with baptism at this point in my life. At first I was like, whatever, if it makes your family happy, do it. And then I started studying the origins of baptism, and it's literally preparing your child for sacrifice is what it is. You dress them in white, you put oils and water on them, you're giving them to. So nonetheless, Catholics, just like Presbyterians, are baptized as baby when you're not aware. They baptize you, and then the Catholic Church, when you receive the sacrament of confirmation, you're reconfirming your contract basically with the spirituality of the church. Okay, so now he did eventually take the test to make it into the Capuchin order. So this is a Franciscan order, which is Saint Francis that we spoke about last time. And the Capuchin order reformed as the Capuchins in 1525 with the purpose of wearing the original tunics. So the monks that you see in the brown tunics, those are Capuchin monks. They take a total vow of complete poverty to the point where they're basically wearing a potato sack, as their outfit. All right, so 6th of January, 1903, at 15 years old, he enters the order as a novice. On the 22nd of January, 1903, he took the name Friar Pio in honor of Pope Pius I. He took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience at that point. Now, by 17, Pio's health was majorly declining. He was suffering with insomnia, fainting spells, migraines. He could only digest milk and cheese. During this time, he would go into a trance while in prayer, and there were reports of levitation, which is a siddhi in the yoga Sutras. Now, for me, the migraines and the insomnia and the fainting spells to me could also go back to the digestion issues. Digestion
Right.
issues are the source of a lot of health problems that you might not even realize. Your colon, if your colon's backed up, like that's your trash can of your body. So if you can't get any toxins in your colon to be eliminated, it's going to push it back into your bloodstream. And so it can cause you a
Absolutely.
lot of sicknesses if you have that bad of digestion. So, but also when you are that sick, sometimes I do think that it pushes your conscious mind kind of in the back burner. So the veil thins, especially for somebody who already kind of has a thin belt anyway. I absolutely believe he was probably levitating. There are yogis in India who levitate. It's not that big of a deal. People who can control their consciousness can do that, right? So after 7 years in the priesthood, Pio decided to travel north to visit the chapel and the burial place of St. Francis of Assisi. He was super obsessed with St. Francis of Assisi. In 1905, the church was so concerned about his health issues that he sent him to the mountains for fresh air. You guys remember, like in the Victoria age, when women were tired, they would send them to the seaside? That was the doctor's prescription. I see these memes on Instagram all the time where people are like, I want to be a Victorian woman, where they just send me to the seaside to breathe and get the fresh air for my health.
Right.
So this is, I was like, where's that prescription? Can we get that prescription again? I'd love to be prescribed like you need to go stay in the mountains, like just go sit in the mountains.
Yeah, exactly. We've got a few cabins there for you. Just go and take one.
Go stand.
Yeah.
So Padre Pio, this dude was so sick and so just wackadoo for the church, wackadoo in a good way, that they were like, go to the mountains. Just go to the mountains and just be in the mountains. You'll get better there. But it didn't work. He continued to be sick. He continued to be in these levitation manic episodes. And so they brought him back in 1907. Through all the sickness, he did remain steadfast in his religious life. Now, this is funny too. After the mountains didn't work, the church was like, you know what will help him get better? We're going to send him back to live with his mother for a little while. So they sent him back to live with his mother, thinking that that would help him get better. And during this time, Padre Pio started what I guess we call now automatic writing. It's where you kind of just start writing, and sometimes you can close your eyes, and it's like it just things come to you, and a lot
It's
of
like channeling.
yeah, a lot of
Channeling.
channeling. It's a form of channeling. A lot of mediums do this. And here he wrote a lot of mystical letters. Now I cannot find these mystical letters, but he definitely started writing stuff, and I bet I mean, probably the church probably confiscated him. By August of 1910, he was ordained as a priest. On the 14th of August, 1910, he performed his first mass at the parish church of Our Lady of the Angels. Now, I'm going to jump to 1960, then I'm going to pull back to World War I. So if you guys see me jump in timeline, we're just kind of going through some life events at this point. On the 4th of September, 1916, Pio was ordered to return to the community, so to return to the monk, where the monks live, and he was placed at Our Lady of Grace Friary in the Gargano Mountains in San Giovanni Rotondo. There were only 7 friars there. This is where he was going to remain for the rest of his life. So he was sent to a friary with only 7 other friars. Sounds like a peaceful living to me. I bet he was the entertainment with all the stuff going on in his life. Now, quickly, let's talk about World War I, because World War I broke out on the 28th of July, 1914. So 2 years before he was sent to this particular friary where he would live the rest of his life. So the friars that he had kind of been associated with, 5 friars were drafted into military service for World War I. I didn't know they did that with, I thought being part of the clergy meant you didn't get drafted, but apparently I was wrong. I mean, I guess everybody is up for sale.
But they might not be drafted to fight. They might just be drafted to be priests or
military
whatever.
service. I don't know. I was like, what? Because that's crazy. Because we know, like with the Vietnam War, with drafting, one of the ways to get out of the Vietnam War was to join the clergy. Now, in November of 1950, Pio himself was actually drafted, but he was discharged due to his poor health. So those digestion problems come in handy for him. No one wants to share a tent with someone who's farting all night because they got bad health. So he gets sent back, and this is when he goes and finds his way to this particular friary where he would spend the rest of his life. Now, Padre Pio's life on a daily basis is so traditional yoga, y'all. I was like, this dude, he's practicing Brahma Muhurta. He's doing all these things that we do in the traditional yoga world to keep you in line with God. And I don't know if he actually knew that. So he was big into meditation. He would use the rosary as a form of meditation, which that's japa meditation. The rosary and japa meditation are the same, where you move the beads and you say a mantra, like Om Namah Shivaya, or your rosary. It's a mantra basically. And it gets your mind into that meditative track. He was a man. And it's actually funny, Shanti, things we were talking about offline. He was really insistent with his people, I don't know, your parishioners, that they practice self-awareness, that they really reevaluate themselves a lot. All right. He had a mantra himself that I loved. He would say all the time, pray, hope, and don't worry. Pray, hope, and don't worry. God's got it. You do all you can do, and then you leave everything else up to God. So he also believed that confession was the most important sacrament, and was also famous for being able to read one's soul, meaning he could read what it is they wanted to talk about. And the way that he talked about the way that the people that knew him, because I'm not a huge believer in like the confessional system of the Catholic Church. I feel like that's kind of can be used as a little bit exploitive. But the way that people talked about people that knew Padre Pio, in these podcasts I listened to, they all kind of, in their own voices, kind of talked about his confessions in a very unique way. That when you would go to do confessional with Padre Pio, it was very much a conversation with Padre Pio. And you walked away feeling a lot better about yourself and a lot more grounded. And I thought, as I was listening to this, I was like, the dude invented talk therapy. Like, that's what therapy is. Like, that's how he didn't hear somebody's confession and just be like, do 10 Hail Marys, blah, blah, blah. They would actually talk about it. They would talk about it. Like, there was one person who had a, we can't say this word on YouTube, a schmortion, removing and she was talking with Padre Pio and released this guilt. And the way that he addressed it with her was very much the way I would address it with somebody. Like, you got to forgive yourself. You have to forgive the person that was in that position to begin with. You can't, so he was very forgiving, and he just wanted people to like talk about whatever was bothering them and weighing their shadow work, basically, right? So I thought, how interesting. Like, he wasn't using people's confessions as blackmail. He wasn't using people's confessions as a way to exploit the faith. He was not using God as a weapon at all. And none of these episodes did anybody ever talk about Padre Pio giving any indication that God loved them any less because of things that they had done in the past. He was very full of grace and mercy. And I thought that just gave me kind of chill bumps. I was like, so basically his confessionals were literally talk therapy with somebody who cared and saw the person as a human being, a fallible human being who was loved by God. And I just thought that was beautiful. Now he would also rise every morning at 2:30 a.m. That's what time I get up on Wednesdays. That's Brahma Muhurta. When I'm in India, I have to get up that early because we're looking at a particular time of day that's called Brahma Muhurta, means time of God. It's in the Vata hour of the day. And he would get up at 2:30 and basically do almost like what we would call in yoga a puja. We call it a puja. It's his own spiritual practice, his prayer, his meditation, his quiet time with God. That's what everybody does in India. It's the same thing. So he obviously had some internal knowing of these particular times of day that allow for more of an opening to the divine, where it's quiet and that's why I love doing my practice super early, because it's quiet. It's just you. It's just you. There's silence around you. he became almost like a spiritual master teacher or guru in a sense, because he had these 5 rules that he had his parishioners follow, that they would do their weekly confession with him, come and sit down and talk with him, that they would do daily communion, which whatever, that's just, I mean, I'm not a big believer in communion, but you could see that as a rich, like as a yoga practice, or as, something you do every day to keep you in line with your goal. He would encourage spiritual reading, and he didn't strictly just say the Bible. He would encourage people to study the spiritual text for themselves, right? When you're
Right.
encouraging your parishioners to do this away from the priest, you're giving them the autonomy to understand the scripture for themselves. Um, Meditation, he wanted his parishioners meditating, and examination of consciousness, so or self-awareness, to constantly be studying themselves. And so I just thought, oh my God, this is like literally, besides communion, this is literally what people in the yoga world do. It takes Christianity. He took Christianity and turned Christianity into a practice, and not just a dogmatic faith, which I think Christianity in its true form should be a practice. You're practicing, you're working on yourself, you're trying to get your own Christ consciousness, to be a better person, to understand, to refine your soul. It's not just doing things and going to a building and sitting there for an hour on Sunday. It's a daily refinement of who you are as a person. And that's what he was doing. Now, he started in 1918 is when he started showing signs of the stigmata. And he also was known to bilocate, where he was in 2 places at once, and that is also a siddhi. People, though, said that they didn't know if he was aware that he was doing that, which because when people would say, "Oh, I saw you over here," he'd always be like, "No, no, no, I was there," or whatever. But and part of me thinks with bilocation, though, it seems like when he would bilocate, he was helping people who needed him. But part of me is like, is that the doppelganger? Is that like a demon that's doppelganging a good person to try to manipulate other people? We see that in the Law of One, where a lot of Mother Mary sightings have actually been the Lizzies trying to manipulate people, because they'll pretend to be someone they're not. So I kind of have a question mark over his bilocation. Was he really, and it was his higher self really putting him in 2 places to be of greater service to humanity? Or were the powers that be in the Aluma Shmati like mirroring him to manipulate people because they trusted him? I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know, but that's just my grain of salt with the whole bilocation thing. And of course, levitation. He was also known to speak languages he didn't know. For all we know, is the only language he could speak himself was Italian. But people would come to him and speaking in English or German or languages he didn't know, and he would speak back. He would just all of a sudden know how to speak back to them in these languages. And also, he was known to heal people, being able to have the power of healing with his hands. He seemed extremely, like I said, very humble. He hated, according to some of the people who knew him, he hated having his picture taken. Did not like having his picture taken. When he got the stigmata, he hid it for a long time. He wouldn't show people. He would wear like gloves, and he ignored it for a long time. But eventually the pain of the stigmata became so much so that he couldn't hide it for much longer. And I wonder with him, I wonder sometimes with someone like Padre Pio, who probably had a little bit of scrupulosity, but seems to be a really good person and really wanted to help. I wonder sometimes, when we know that a lot of demonic attacks cause bleeding, if this was a way of a demon attacking him, with him thinking, tricking him into believing that it was some divine providence because it was the stigmata, it was the places of the crucifixion. I don't know. And his pain, because that's painful, right? Like, to have that feel, that's extremely painful. And is that pain slow? My boyfriend reminds me that a lot. Like the 4D negatives, they're going to do everything in their power to try to stop you from doing your work. There are times in this battle on YouTube, and I'm sure Chantelle, you can relate, where I've been like, this is so frustrating. I'm so shadow banned, and I deal with all this crap. And my boyfriend's like, yeah, it's the 4D negatives trying to get you to give up and stop doing your work. You just got to keep going. And so we see this manipulation, I think, for the dark powers to slow people down. And if Padre Pio was kind of going against the grain of mainstream Catholicism, where he was really giving the power to the parishioners and not him as a priest, and really helping people, then how ingenious is it of the 40 negatives to give him the stigmata, where he thinks it's some divine providence from God, but he's in so much damn pain that he can't fulfill his dharma like he was, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Now, in 1925, this is when it gets kind of dicey, because in 1925, Pio converted an old convent into a hospital for those who were in need. So he took a convent that wasn't being used by anyone, and he took it over and said, "Well, we're going to turn this into a hospital to help the poor." That's not the interesting part. It's going to get interesting. By 1940, this hospital he had created was so popular and used by and helping so many people that the church who had just kind of like given him this building, like, yeah, do your thing, it became so popular that the church decided to send a committee in to collect donations to make it bigger than it was. Right? So
Wow.
1947, construction starts. It is alleged that the bulk of the money came from Emmanuel Brinato. He was kind of like a mafioso guy, and most of his money they believed he got from the black market from the war. And then 250 million Italian lire was donated from the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration. So anytime, in my opinion, that the UN gets involved in something, it's being corrupted. And so I think at this point, Padre Pio had started a hospital that, in the best of intentions, but by 1947, 22 years later, it was taken over by corruption. That's my opinion. Because in 1956, they take the power away from Padre Pio and they give it to the Holy See, which is the Pope.
The Holy See.
The Holy
What's
See.
the...
Holy See is the Pope. So it's
Oh, right. Okay.
like
Okay.
Holy See. So, all right. Now, on the 22nd of September, 1968, Padre Pio held a mass, his own mass, to venerate the 50th anniversary of him receiving the stigmata. TV crew and huge crowds of pilgrims came. On the 23rd so after he did this mass, the 23rd of September, in the early morning hours, so after he did this televised mass, he went back home. In the early morning hours, Pio made his last confession and renewed his vows to God. He was so weak, he could not say his Hail Marys, but was able to do a bit of the rosary. Around 2:30 a.m., the time that he would normally get up to do his puja, we'll call it, he passed away at 81 years old. So the scars of the stigmatas disappeared a few days after his death. The doctors examined his body and said that this is wild, because they saw gashes, but then all of a sudden it completely healed and closed up. So doctors were baffled by his stigmata. The person we're going to cover next week, that's a totally different story, which we're going to get into. Now, the 26th of September, 1968 was his funeral. 100,000 people came to his funeral. That's how beloved he was. Now, all right.
How many people? 1,000.
100,000 in 1968 showed up for his funeral. Now, he is buried in the crypt in the Church of Our Lady of Grace. But y'all, it does not end there. Because on the 3rd of March, 2008, recently, his body was exhumed. His body was still in pretty fair condition, which I don't know. Like, who wants to exhume a body? I'm sorry. I'm not scared.
But for what reason?
We're going to get to that, because they're up to something. They took his heart out and they put it in a special golden crypt. There are pictures online of people kissing his literal heart. And the rest of his remains were sent to the Church of St. Pio, obviously named after him. So they took his literal heart out in 2008. They Yeah, Lisa D. Nothing is sacred to these people. So this guy dies in 1968. What, 50 years later, they pull him out and they take his heart out. Y'all, you can Google pictures of this, and it's in like this like glass case, and there's all these freaking people like you and me, just normal schmucks out there lining up to kiss the heart, thinking it's going to give them some special powers. I'm sorry, you guys. Don't go kissing no heart. Like, that's disgusting. That is disgusting. Now we know, like Jesus of the Sacred Heart, that picture of Jesus, it's got his that picture. That's we know that's like symbol for cannibalism. So I just like I wonder where his other. They say his other body remains replaced in the Church of Saint Pio. Part of me is like, yeah, right. Like y'all are telling me you just stuck the rest of his body back, and it's just the tour of his heart going around Europe for all these Catholics to kiss the heart. What are they then going to do with the heart if they've gotten all your energy and your love on this organ?
Exactly.
Like, wake up, y'all. This is some sketchy black this is some crazy sketchy black magic. Like, this is where in the Bible do you see Jesus pulling people's hearts out and kissing their hearts? Where did this come from? This is not in any of the fake Bible, the canonized Bible. It's not in there. It's not any of the missing books of the Bible of them using body parts. So where are they getting this from to do this with these body parts? Like, I feel like this is where people have lost their critical thinking skills. Like, do we have Catholics in the audience? Does that not seem weird? Like, did someone not go, wait a minute, you want me to kiss a heart of a dead guy? Why?
Yeah. Exactly. I agree with you.
You're sitting
and I think you said it quite succinctly. It's like, I think when it comes to stuff like this, a lot of people have lost their critical thinking skills because, as you say, that is very un-Christ-like. No one would want, leave the dead, let them rest in peace, put their body parts away. Every time you're going to try and suck up their energy, there's a price you pay.
Yeah.
It's called karma.
I'm like, yeah, exactly. That brings up a whole other point. Did Padre Pio consent to you pulling up his butt? It's so sad, Shanti. I used to be in the United States. We can have on our driver's license, we can put whether we want to be an organ donor or not. Like when you go into the DMV, you check. So basically, like, meaning for us, like normal people, I always was under the impression that if like I were to die in a car accident and my organs are of value, absolutely. If there's somebody in the hospital that needs my liver, 100%. But now I've taken that off of my driver's license because we know now that's the trick, right? They want you to think that you are donated, that if you are no longer living, because they know you're a good person. Most of us are good people. And most of us would be like, if I'm not living and there's a child in Emory Hospital down the street that needs a liver transplant, absolutely take my liver. Absolutely. But we know, and I still feel that way, but we know now the government, if it's on my driver's license, they're going to take my organs and they're going to use my organs.
Yeah.
They're not going to give me
because there's no, once you've signed over your organs and once your body becomes their property,
right?
They can do what the hell they want with that. You donated your organs for science.
I removed that now. No more.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you.
And I will say that, let me make that clear. Like Shanti, we're both O negative. That means that anybody in the world can take our blood and take our organs, because we if there is somebody out there who is also O negative, because O negatives we can give to everybody, but we can only take from other O negatives. If there is somebody, Shanti, if you need a kidney, if anybody of our friends out there is O negative and they need a kidney, I will be 100%. I would get emotional because my uncle did this for his friend. I will 100% give you my kidney. I would do that for another human being because you need these organs. And my uncle did that. His best friend so my uncle's now since passed away, but his best friend needed a kidney transplant. And all of the family members checked to see if they matched, and none of his family members did. But my uncle, who was his best friend, did match. And so my uncle was like, absolutely, I will give you my one without a doubt, and so that's a beautiful thing that we as human beings will do for each other. And I just, the fact that this group would manipulate something so that, I mean, we know I don't even think we even know the extent of their evil. We know a lot of evil, but I don't even think we even know that, because it is just so absurd. And I feel sorry for. I hope that Padre Pio is haunting the shit out of the Vatican at this point.
Exactly.
I hope he's poltergeisting around that.
I think there's a lot of poltergeists around the Vatican, that's for sure.
Do what?
I think there's a lot of poltergeisting around the Vatican.
Yeah.
After all the shenanigans they've gotten up to. Wow.
Pope Dope, I never came across that story studying Padre Pio. I read a lot of references, and I never once heard anybody say anything like that. Ever.
Wow. Well, he obviously had an issue with masturbation, didn't he?
Well, I don't, the interesting thing is, like, he was pretty forgiving when it came to, like, sex before marriage. This was a more conservative time, obviously, than the one we're living in now. But, like, even for women who had a shmurtion, a shmurtion with the removal of the baby, he was very, like, loving with them. And, like, it just, it doesn't change the way God feels about you. So, yeah.
Wow.
The whole passing, the whole passing around of the heart is very disturbing.
No, that's macabre. That's very macabre. We don't want to be doing that.
And it makes me think Shanti probably was O negative, because we know it's something about the DNA of people like that they want.
Yeah.
That's funny. Maybe we should introduce those people to Rasputin. Maybe they're in the wrong cult. Maybe they need to change because there's another cult that will absolutely let you tug on your schlong all day. So
goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's Padre Pio. And I will say I had so many people wanted me to cover Padre Pio. I will say there is a movie that came out with Shia LaBeouf, who played Padre Pio, in 2023. It's a recent movie. I tried to watch it. I couldn't get into it. I mean, Shia LaBeouf does kind of look like him, but I just could not get into the movie made about Padre Pio. I don't know, maybe because it's Hollywood, and we know Hollywood's going to manipulate, and why are they just now coming? I mean, I don't know. So yeah, that's Padre Pio, guys. There's some pretty groovy pictures of him with his stigmata too, if you guys look online.
Well, there's just another interesting person in our history that we are more enlightened with today. Thank you to you, Brice.
Oh,
so thank you for our history professor and nerd, Brice Watson from Esoteric Atlanta.
Gossiping is my favorite thing to do, y'all. So we just gonna gossip. We're just gonna keep gossiping about these dead people.
She's gonna be petty. She's gonna be petty.
We're gonna be real petty next week, because the person we're going to talk about next week, I feel so sorry for her. She's a female. And I feel like I just want to, like, smack the church for how they manipulated. I think she had a major personality disorder. We'll talk about it next week. So we're going to start talking about some of the females.
Okay. Look forward to that. Okie dokes. Lots of love, everybody. Love you hanging out with us and chatting with us in the comments. So, like, share, subscribe. That'd be very awesome if you could do that, please. And I shall see you. I'm not sure about tomorrow, but remember as well, we have Patreon on Saturday, Gathering with Caleb. I did send something out this morning. I will be sending out the topic in the next day or two, but for those of you, we will be gathering on Zoom again on Saturday, which would be 7 o'clock my time. And that is, what's your time there now?
Right now it's 1:09 p.m.
That's 1 o'clock Atlanta time.
Yeah, East Coast time.
So 1 o'clock Atlanta time. Okay, everybody. God bless you all. Take good care of yourselves. And don't be naughty now.
Don't go kiss.